Merry Christmas and welcome to Morning Coffee with Pisan Academy. I'm Deanna, and today I want to talk to you about the top 5 Christmas traditions we get from the Victorian age. The Victorian period is in the mid-19th century, about the 1840s, all the way almost to 1900, when Queen Victoria reigned over England. And it was during the Industrial Revolution. This is the time period in which Charles Dickens was writing his novels. And so there's a lot of transition in this time period. And as people were moving to the cities and interacting a little differently with each other, we see some very interesting traditions begin for Christmas time. This is also the period of time coming right after where a lot of Christmas traditions that had been celebrated in the Middle Ages and even into the Renaissance had gone away because people there were government actions banning Christmas festivities. So let's start with number 5. The 5th top Christmas tradition that we get from the Victorian age are the Christmas crackers. Now, I'm not talking about the crackers that you eat. These are those crackers that look like a giant piece of candy. They're made of paper, and these were created in the 1840s by a candy maker named Tom Smith. He was visiting Paris and saw these amazing bonbons that were wrapped in paper, and he brought that tradition back to England. When he was selling these bonbons himself, they didn't do quite as well as he had hoped. So while sitting in front of a fire one night, he noticed the crackling of the logs, and he thought to himself, if he was able to make paper pop and then have the bonbons come out and have a sound related to them, that maybe because children like noises and it might be something unique, this would make his bonbons sell even more. And so he experimented with different chemicals on the paper, and he was finally able to find something that would work. And so what he did is that he coated the paper with some chemicals and put in a bonbon and then a piece of paper with a poem or a saying. And when you pulled both ends, it would make a popping sound, and out would come this treat and a little poem. And this is called the Christmas cracker. Now, not everybody in the United States celebrates these, but you can find them all over in different stores, and they're really fun to have for a Christmas dinner. Both children and adults can enjoy them. Today, they can be filled with little toys or little trinkets. There's often a little saying or a poem. Also, sometimes they'll have a little crown that you can wear made of paper, and this tradition continues today. Number 4 is the Christmas card. Now, this tradition was started by Sir Henry Cole, who noticed that during this festive time of year, he would have so much correspondence that he would need to respond to. He decided to print cards that had a saying, and then he hired someone to hand draw illustrations on them, and this would save him from having to write the same sentiment over and over. Now, these didn't take off at first, but when color printing became more and more popular, the Christmas card became pretty much a staple. Now, again, it starts in England, in Victorian England, and even Victoria's children were known for sending out Christmas cards. This is still a tradition that continues, but in the digital age, I think a lot of people are starting to send e-cards. I personally still love to send paper cards, and I have stacks of them that I send out every year. So we can thank the Victorians and Henry Cole for this fun tradition. Our number 3 tradition is Father Christmas. In 1822, Clement C. Moore wrote a poem called A Visit from St. Nicholas. Now, this poem wasn't popularized until a series of engravings in the 1860s by Thomas Nast included it. I'll read a couple lines from the poem, and you'll see for yourself how this poem influenced our understanding of Father Christmas. He was dressed in all fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly elf. So that really describes what we see as Santa Claus. So let's see what other influences we had for old jolly Saint Nick. In the Scandinavian traditions, they had a god named Odin, in their Norse tradition, and he had a flowing white beard, was dressed in all blue, but he was also known for bringing presents to children and providing charity and goodwill. And so this tradition gets kind of wrapped up with some of the other traditions of Saint Nick or Santa Claus. In the medieval period, there was Saint Nicholas, and he was celebrated, and he was known for being the saint of children and the poor, and he was known for his benevolence and good cheer. In the 19th century, Dutch immigrants brought their own Sinterklaas to America, and they settled in New York, and it was their tradition of Sinterklaas that Washington Irving includes in some of his Christmas stories, and wrapped this idea of Sinterklaas with St. Nicholas. In fact, there was a St. Nicholas Society in New York, and Washington Irving served as its president. So although we have Father Christmas, Sinterklaas, St. Nicholas, they all kind of meld together into this person who brings good cheer and gifts and benevolence to children and the poor in this winter time of year. Our number 2 tradition is charity and gift giving. Now, charity and gift giving were not invented by the Victorians, but Charles Dickens' novel, A Christmas Carol, popularized this as a Christmas tradition. After Dickens published A Christmas Carol in 1843, there was a rise in charitable gift giving and kindness in this time of year. Now, this also goes back earlier because the Roman tradition of Saturnalia was a feast of agriculture, and it was a time when they would redistribute the harvest and people would celebrate, and there would be all these festivals and feasts. And so Dickens and the Romans and even Washington Irving's Christmas stories, gift giving and giving to charity became more and more popular during the Christmas season. Our number 1 Christmas tradition that we get from the Victorians is the Christmas food and drink that we share. The Christmas feast is something that existed in the Middle Ages. Again, that Roman tradition of Saturnalia included a feast, but it's really, once again, Dickens that popularized this idea of the Christmas dinner, the Christmas goose, Christmas pudding. This is something that became very much a tradition for Christmas after the 1840s. So in the Victorian age, bakeries were closed on Christmas Day, but what they would do was rent out their ovens so people could cook a Christmas meal. Now, most people didn't have ovens in their home. They would have a hearth or a fire that they would cook in, usually using a pot. They may have a kettle, but they didn't have an oven. And so the bakeries would lend out their ovens so people could cook their Christmas turkeys or their Christmas goose. And this allowed more people to have a huge feast for Christmas. Families and neighbors and friends would all gather around the table and share in this festive meal. In A Christmas Carol, Bob Cratchit and his sons go to pick up their Christmas goose, and this would have been in one of those rented ovens. There's also a scene in A Christmas Carol where they're stirring the plum pudding over the hearth, and this was a very popular dish because you could make it in a pot over a fire. Now, Christmas pudding, as it is now called, is plum pudding. It was a very popular dish. Now, it's called a pudding, but it's more like a cake, and it was made up to a month in advance. In some references in the Victorian age, we have people making Christmas pudding well in advance or even for the next year. And Christmas drink included a mulled wine or a spiced wine. And so these are traditions that we continue today. So we can thank Charles Dickens, Washington Irving, Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and all those wonderful festive moments from that era that continue today. If you're enjoying our videos, please like and share. We have links to our social media in the description below. From our family at Pisan Academy to yours, we hope you have a very Merry Christmas.